Hey folks, still chasing wattles. This is probably one of the best patches to get this guy. I'm in a Hawkesbury Sandstone Reserve at Burnham Reserve, Janelli, or the Bonnet Bay area, Sutherland Shire. And to find this guy, Hawkesbury Sandstone Ridge normally does it for you, especially if it's had a fire or a bit of disturbance. I'm under a power line easement here through a bushland patch. It goes down to the Warrenora River, almost to George. It's sort of where the Warrenora joins the Georges here. And this is the beautiful Acacia suaveolens. The sweet wattle, or the sweet scented wattle, or the scented wattle. Probably gets all those names. And there's plenty of it here on a Hawkesbury Sandstone ridge top. You might find it on heavier soil. You might find it in forests like Sydney Turpentine Ironbark Forest, where there's a little bit of shale influence, or maybe a fair bit of shale. But it's normally sandstone that it's known for hanging out on. That's the best place to try and pick it up. Suaveolens, it's a shrub to about 3 metres. You normally don't get them taller than that. And the lookalike is something like Acacia stricta, which is a much taller plant. This guy is a fair bit shorter. And even these guys here are getting up to, about 3 metres would be the go. They might get a little bit taller in some cases. Very thin stems. That's about 15 mil thick there. And you can see I can easily move it around, wobble it around. Like falcata, it's very flexible. It's in beautiful pod stage at the moment. So this is a time for the pod stage. The main flowering time is meant to be April to September, I think. So winter mainly, maybe autumn, winter. They're not too hard to find in flower. You can see them in flower a lot of the year, I think. But people really like the pods. They're very distinctive. And most of these are well and truly in the pod stage. I reckon I will find a couple in flower. I'll just have to look around and we can have a look at the flowers as well. Suaveolens, it's another phyllodeal wattle with flowers in globular heads. So it's doing the globular heads and the phyllodes. The phyllodes are reported as 15 centimetres long, 15 centimetres long and 2 centimetre wide. So that's the dimensions you got. And if you meet Acacia stricta, this is the one I might confuse this with. Acacia stricta is very similar, especially when it's this big, but it's a taller plant and it's got much more prominent leaf venation than suaveolens. It also puts on a lot more flowering material, I think, or puts on more inflorescences, definitely. The inflorescences are also a deeper yellow. This guy puts on very creamy, pale yellow inflorescences. They might be some of the differences. It's known for having these angular stems as well, but a lot of wattles can throw that. But it's got these nice flattened angular stems, especially when you get to the new tips. They go a bit two-dimensional. So it's a very angular stem there. The phyllodes, they're known for having prominent mid-veins, but they don't really have prominent side branching and side venation. So when you come up the mid-vein, that's really prominent. But when you look at the tissue, I don't know if the sun or the shade's going to work better here. I might get into a bit of, dappled light tends to work sometimes. You can see there's not a lot of obvious sideways venation or secondary or tertiary venation. That's a feature of suaveolens. They've got a mucro. You can see the mucro there. Just like the Acacia prominens video I made, it's another wattle with a mucro. A lot of them have these. So it's got a definite mucro there. Don't know why I just didn't leave that in focus. There we go. And there is a gland. There's a gland down the bottom near the pulvinus. I think it's meant to be within a couple of mils of the pulvinus. Just trying to pick it up. That's probably it there, that darkened structure. And if I haven't said this before, this gets a bit confusing. It's on the upper leaf margin rather than the lower leaf margin. These wattles they tend to orientate their leaves sideways rather than putting their leaf out sort of, you know, fat side up or down. They put the leaf edge up or down. They're sort of, you know, twisting the leaf a bit sideways, and they're putting the leaf up or down. And the gland is always on the skyward side. People say the upper side, but that gets a bit confusing. We mean the upper margin or the lower margin in this case. And what the wattle is known to do is put the gland on the skyward side or the upward side. So it's a pretty cool feature. I'm not saying it's 100% consistent all the time because leaves will sort of twist and spiral, but that's how it's normally described. Yeah, there's probably, there's a gland there. In this case, they're a darker brown colour, the glands. They've just got a bit of brown impregnated tissue there. So that's the gland on suaveolens. I've just reminded myself, I can never remember all these features of all the individual wattles. There's a second gland up near the mucro. This is really atypical for wattles, but there's a second gland up near the mucro. And we'd have to zoom in and try and see it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it justice with the light here. I'll just, try there. Don't know if I'll be able to pick it up with the phone, but this wattle's known for sometimes having a second gland up near the mucro. I just remember at the workshop last week, I saw it straight away in the first leaf that I checked, or the first phylode. Just muck around with the zoom here, muck around with the light as well. But probably a hand lens is going to do it justice, but when you sometimes look, or when you look, there's a second gland up near the mucro. Don't know if it's that bit of yellow tissue there. I haven't bought my hand lens today, which was a bit silly of me, but I've just forgotten with this one that there's a second gland up there near the mucro in some cases. I'm just trying to find it so we can convince ourselves. Just taking the time with this. Yeah, I'm battling to see it today, but we did see it at the Acacia workshop. Sorry, one of those things I can't quite capture today. I'm going to look with the naked eye and just see if I can see it. Yeah, it did need a hand lens to pick it up, but I think I can see it there next to the mucro just with the naked eye. Pretty cool feature and not something you get on too many wattles. I think that might be it there, just that bit of yellow tissue. What's really obvious, as you can see, is these beautiful pods. And they are about to 5 centimetres long by 2 centimetres wide. So that's pretty chunky for some of our Sydney acacia pods. They're normally long and thin. This has a nice short chunky one. And I just touched on this in some other wattle videos. If I just try not to be too impactful and just take one. They've got seeds arranged horizontally. The seeds are going across the pod rather than longitudinally. So those seeds are arranged sideways. They're sort of stacked sideways, and I'm probably going to need a really almost mature one to probably demonstrate it. But you can see the pale seeds just inside the pod developing, and totally different to falcata, which I showed with pods the other day. They had longitudinally arranged seeds. Well, these have got horizontally arranged seeds. So it's just a cool feature for this particular species. You can probably see it more there. Just those paler outlines inside there, the developing babies, really, developing embryos. They're horizontally arranged across the seed pod. So that's a cool thing with suaveolens. You get, not saying it's atypical, you get a few wattles doing that and some are ID'd on that, but in Sydney, I'd say most of them throw longitudinally arranged seeds. You can see there's a glaucous wax on the pods that I can just scratch off, and the stems can be pruniose as well, meaning they've got a white wax on them, that you can sort of scratch off. In eucalypts they call it glaucus, in wattles they call it prunios. Just a white wax there. So I think suaveolens, it's a pretty easy one, definitely with the pods. The geographic range, it's South Australia, Victoria, Tasmania, New South Wales, Queensland. In Queensland, it goes up the coast to about the Bundaberg, Gladstone area. I think that's the main range. It's got a strong coastal distribution. It doesn't get inland very much, but it does go up places like the Blue Mountains to Lithgow. I think there's some little clusters around between maybe Grafton and Armidale, that sort of area, but it doesn't really go too far inland. It does creep up onto the tablelands, but it won't go too far into the tablelands. But I think there's also a cluster sort of, you know, north of Lithgow, a bit east of Candos, that sort of area there, which isn't too far up into the tablelands. It's all around the coast of Tasmania except for the southwest. It sort of runs around the coast of Tasmania. It's on the Bass Strait Islands as well. It doesn't get to that southwest part of Tasmania, it sort of looks like. In South Australia, it's just in the eastern pocket there, the extreme sort of southeastern pocket, Mount Gambier and further north. And Victoria, it seems to go along the sort of southern coastline of Victoria. That's its main sort of distribution, maybe coming around the eastern coast and going up into New South Wales. So that's its range from Mount Gambier area, South Australia, along the coast and right up to Bundaberg in Queensland. And it's around the Tasmanian coast as well, most of the Tasmanian coast. I'll just find some flowers and we'll just have a quick look at those if I can get some. I saw some here last week, so hopefully we can grab some. Acacia suaveolens, it's got really short inflorescence clusters. They're about 1 centimetre to 3 centimetres long, and I think you get up to about 12 heads in the cluster. So you've got a common axis there, axis coming out of the leaf axil. So an axis coming out of the leaf axil, it's 1 to 3 centimetres long, and it can have about 12 heads. That one's got about 5 heads, maybe 6. And that one there's got about 5 or maybe 6 or 7 or so, but they're really short. So the whole plant doesn't do a lot of flowering. It puts on really nice pods, and they're sort of a lot bigger, but the flowering structures are just a bit shorter. Maybe you've got a couple of pods being formed from each cluster, I would think. So whether you've got multiple pods being formed from one head or just one pod per head or something like that. But you do get a lot of pods, so we'd assume that at least, you know, one head can develop a pod, or maybe multiple pods can develop from the one head. But they're very dainty. I'll call it dainty again. It's not putting on a lot of flowering material. But again, that adds to its identification, the ease of identification. These phyllodes are pretty long and thin. But, you know, just that typical flowering appearance. I've not put in a lot on. It just it's another thing that assists with the identification. So not a lot of flowering material. But if they put, you know, one cluster each leaf axil, then you get a nice flowering spray. Just not as obvious as some of the other wattles we've seen this spring. So that's the beautiful suaveolens. Don't forget the glands up at the tip of the phyllodes if you can get it, and the glands at the base as well. And the nice winged stems. This one's doing it again. They're very winged and flattened. I'll just try and finish off on that. There we go. If I can zoom in, you can just see they've got this nice, narrow, flattened, winged stems. Gives them a very sort of sharpish texture there.